Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ+ women? You know what they say. Life is short and the world is wide. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ+ woman, you want to be able to go on vacation, have some fun, and be yourself. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations, so you can relax and be completely yourself. Olivia also provides the entertainment, bringing comedians and musicians from within our community. Traveling by yourself? No problem. Olivia has a robust solos program so you can travel independently, together. Single, coupled, or in a group, you'll meet amazing LGBTQ+ women who come from all walks of life yet have so much in common. Join the thousands of Olivians who travel to bucket list destinations all over the world. It's life-changing to be in the majority on your own vacation. Discover Olivia for yourself at olivia.com today. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cruising. My name is Sarah Gabrielli, and I have a very fun interview for you with lesbian comic and activist Robin Tyler. As someone who's been fighting for LGBTQ+ rights since the 60s, Robin has so many accolades to her name. She called for and produced for 3 marches on Washington, including the first one for gay rights in 1971. She became the first out lesbian on U.S. national TV in 1978 when she did her set on Phyllis Diller's first annual Funny Woman's show. That same year, she produced the first gay comedy album, Always a Bridesmaid, Never a Groom, and she would later be part of the first couple to sue the state of California for the right to marry, and then once they finally won their case in 2008, they were the first lesbian couple in the state to get legally married. More recently, she was really heavily featured in the Netflix documentary Outstanding, which follows the history of LGBTQ+ comedy. So I met Robin at, you guessed it, Women's Week in P-Town, as I tend to do. And yes, we did record this at the Summer of Sass house. Robin was actually staying there because Kristen Becker, generous as always, had offered up her extra rooms to the comedians that were traveling in to perform for the week. Robin is going to mention this eventually, but perhaps keep in mind that she had had a bit of a fall there, I believe the day before this was recorded. She was okay, but sore, and I know that was really front of mind for her. Front of mind for me was the fact that I had just seen Robin's set a few hours prior at her recommendation, and it's very much rooted in her life story as a lesbian, an activist, and comic. Like so many things and stories that I had already known I wanted to ask her about, and so I was really wondering, like, how are we going to tell these stories without just copy and pasting her set? And I think we accomplished a bit of a mix of both, but you can see for yourself how that played out. When did you come out of the closet, Robin?
Well, I never came out because I was never in. I'm from Canada, which means I'm very polite and on time. And I fell in love with somebody when I was 16. And I read a booklet called The Ladder in Alberta, Banff, Alberta. I found the booklet. And it said, if you're a woman in love with another woman, what you are is a lesbian. Everybody could tell you you're wrong, but if it feels right to you, it is right. Signed, Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon.
We've talked about Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon before, but they were a lesbian activist couple, most well known for co-founding the Daughters of Bilitis, or Bilitis. I'm not going to take a stance on that right now, which was the first lesbian rights group in the U.S.
Signed, Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon. P.S. Moved to a big city immediately.
And it really said move to a big city?
No, that was the pun. No, of course not. No,
well, then you called back to it. You were like, I took their advice and I moved to a big city. I was like, maybe they did say that.
But here, no. If you're laughing, it's my line. In other words, I'm a comic, so I punch up everything.
Yeah, of course.
And also the other thing I went and told my teacher, and he's screaming at the Banff School of Fine Arts at the top of my lungs, I'm a lesbian. And because, like I'm Jewish, I'm Aries, I'm a lesbian. And my teacher you know who Maggie Smith was when she did The Prime of Jean Brodie?
Yes.
There, dear. We're all thespians. That's why we're here. I guess she thought I was in theater. But I was never, ever ashamed, not for a second. Now there's a very good saying that sums it all up. Love is love. As long as we were in the closet, then people thought we're scary. They don't know us. We're going to seduce children. So basically, I came out right away.
Well, I was really trying to set you up to say the whole slapping the doctor.
Oh, no, I'm not giving you my act. I know. I knew I was a lesbian when I was born because when the doctor hit me, I hit him back, right?
Yeah. Why do you think that you were never ashamed? Like, so many people struggle with like what society puts on them.
Because I had read that one little booklet that said you're okay.
And that really, that meant everything to you.
Yeah, that's why I think it's too bad, because when all these performers were on television and they were gay, but they couldn't come out, right? Pauline, Kay Ballard, she was a Broadway star too. All these performers, Doris Day was bisexual. Did you know that?
I did.
She went with Hermione Gingold. Que-sera. Remember when she was in the bathtub with Rock Hudson? Que-sera, whatever it will be. Well, nothing. That's why they were both singing, soaping each other's backs and thinking of their same-sex lovers. All right. No such thing as same-sex marriage, because after marriage, sex is never the same.
See, you're willingly giving them some of your
because
act.
I'm talking natural stuff now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I called for the 79 March on Washington, first March on Washington. That was for gay and lesbian and gay rights. And 100,000 people came. The second march, 600,000 people came. And that's when we had the AIDS quilt and the marriage ceremony, which the board didn't want, the March board. Nobody wants that. Heterosexist. We don't want to get married. Yeah, it's a civil right. We want whatever civil rights anybody else has, whether we use them or not. It's a civil right. So 600,000. And then in the 93 March, 1 million people came. And the whole idea of the march is, the first march in Washington, the Democratic Party promised us, we wanted a civil rights bill. The Democratic Party said, oh, no. If you just ask for one thing at a time, you'll get it. So the movement made a mistake, or the supposed leadership. They stopped and they asked for the right to work. Meanwhile, we hardly have anything. We just got the right to serve in the military, finally got the right to marry. And there has been a Democratic Senate, Congress, and president, and they've still never passed or included gay people, LGBT people, LGBTQ, two-spirited and questioning. All right, I'll stop it. But
I'm impressed.
But they've never they've never included us in the Civil Rights Bill.
Yeah.
There's never been an attachment to the 1964 Civil Rights Bill that covered African Americans. And civil rights are just civil rights. I said in my act, there's no such thing as a gay birth certificate or a gay death certificate. So why should there be a gay marriage certificate? It's just marriage, a legal right. But we don't have them. 34 states we still can't rent in. They can still fire you for being gay. All of the red states. So because we're in Provincetown or Brooklyn or Los Angeles or California, we think we're free. We're not free, because we have no civil rights bill. And if Donald Trump, may he rest in peace. If Donald Trump, they've already, when they say make America great again, what Trump really means is make America white again or straight again.
Right.
The reason I don't use the word queer with regards to civil rights is there's no queer civil rights bill. So there's nothing we're going for as queer people, so that's why I always do LGBT. Queer is inclusive. It's a good name, includes everybody.
Yeah.
But basically, in being a cultural phenomenon called queer, we don't focus on the civil rights. It's fun to be queer, but it's not that much fun not to be able to rent an apartment in Alabama.
Yeah. So what do you think initially politicized you?
I came in this way. I swear to God.
Really?
When I was in junior high, do you have junior high? Or was it grade 9?
I had a junior high.
It was 7, 8, and 9.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in junior high. The boys did not have to wear a uniform, but the girls did. So I called for a student strike, and the girls, we all put our uniforms on backwards one day, and we did a student strike. And I think it was the first student strike. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But so I came in an organizer,
How did you even come up with that?
Darling, it's gay and I'm creative. Do you know what I mean? How did Leonard Bernstein write his...
Well, not the actual action, but just the idea of doing an action. For a teenager to kind of just have that in them is kind of amazing.
I was born fighting.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Maybe because I was a little boy. When I looked like a little boy. I got teased, but not too often. Trust me.
Okay.
I always defended myself, and my brothers defended me. But I always fought back, always fought back. I was never a victim.
Mm-hmm. So I really want to talk about when you first got to New York.
Okay. I just went to my first gay bar, the Sea Colony, and they stamped your hand. It's true. And it said queer, put it under a thing. It's interesting because even when you went to the bathroom, they didn't have toilet paper in the bathroom. They would hand you 2 sheets. What if you had to do something more than 2 sheets worth? You know what I mean? But they didn't even respect us enough to keep toilet paper in the bathroom there.
That is really wild.
Yeah,
that people would steal it was the thought?
I have no idea, but I didn't do it in my act.
Misuse it?
It's such a bad image that there was no way I could bring them back to comedy from saying, but that's how we were treated.
So what is the point, the queer stamp? I mean, because at that point, the word queer is not celebrated at all. So what
No, it didn't say queer. That's my joke.
Robin.
It's just, if you make, and if you look today, it still says queer. No. But they
know that part wasn't real.
Right. No, but they stamped your hand with something. It didn't say queer, but it like
to sort of brand you in a way.
No, just a mark so you could go into the club.
Okay, that's what I thought. That makes more sense to me.
Yeah, but to make it funny,
I have to say,
I'm a comic.
Okay. But you said it again, so I thought it was real this time.
All right. Live and learn.
Okay, even though I truly love this ongoing thing we have of me believing all of Robin's bits, I do feel the need to reclip what Robin just said.
They stamped your hand. It's true. And it said queer, put it under a thing.
I truly just clocked her saying this on my 3rd listen through. Anyway.
You could be my granddaughter. Do you know that? That's how young you are.
Really? How old are you?
I'm 82.
Congratulations on that. That's amazing.
From being alive. Most women live until 81. That's considered like the average.
Really?
A woman's going to live. Yesterday, I almost, I fell. So I thought, well, I've lived a year older than what I'm supposed to.
Were you thinking that while you were on the ground?
No. When I was no. I right away went into, let me see if I broke any bones.
Yeah.
I went, I'm a dyke, so I know how to take care of myself. Mm-hmm. So I just went in to check, but it was scary.
Mm-hmm.
Scary.
Yeah, that's really scary. So tell me more about the bar. We've talked a lot about police raids and...
Yeah. Well, a woman would, I'll tell you, but then I'll do the routine on the bar, but it's true.
You don't have to... Okay.
Well, she would stand, you go in, you'd pay $3 to get in. And then, but there's mostly lesbians, a couple of men. A few men, but most of the bars were segregated. So the men went to men's bar. The only places to meet were the bars and the baseball fields if you were a lesbian. When I did the Southern Women's Music Comedy and Comedy Festival in Georgia, that was in the 80s, there was no internet, right? So I had to go to the bars in the South and the baseball fields with leaflets, and that's how we got women there. We leafleted them, but we knew to find out where they played baseball.
Right.
Yeah, so the police would raid the bars, even though they were owned by the mafia, and the mafia played the police would still raid the bars because there's nothing like beating up queer people, right?
They love it.
And a whistle would go off, and the young lesbians would grab gay men and dance with them because otherwise they would have been arrested for dancing with each other or arrested for not wearing 3 articles of female clothing if you're a woman or 3 articles if you're a man. So it was very difficult to, and then after they arrested you, they printed your name in the paper, in the establishment newspaper, so you couldn't get work.
This is maybe a crazy question, but it just reminds me of this bar Charlene's in New Orleans that we've covered. I don't know if you ever in sort of touring had
the what?
Have you heard of Charlene's in New Orleans?
Yes, of course I have. I have a picture of Charlene's bar, the 2 women dancing. I have it in my bedroom.
Really?
Have I heard about it? Yes.
So I actually have a tattoo of the Charlene's logo on my shoulder, and I'm about to really impress Robin with it right now.
I'll send you a picture. Yes, that's what I have. Oh my God. Are you from New Orleans?
No, but we went there. We covered Charlene's. We have an episode about Charlene's. We went to Linda Tucker's house.
I have a picture. They had it in a picture on the wall, right?
Yeah. Oh. But I bring up Charlene's because I know that was a huge thing in New Orleans, and that happened to Charlene where she lost her job because she was arrested.
I emigrated when I was 20, but you had to sign a paper. People need to know this. if you're going to come in from another country saying, I am not a communist, I'm not a prostitute, I'm not a drug addict, and I'm not a homosexual.
Oh my gosh,
and
you had to sign that.
You had to sign it and get it witnessed in front of if you're immigrating. So I signed it because I wasn't a homosexual. I was a lesbian. As a matter of fact, I went to see Judy Garland in Buffalo. And I actually slept outside at night.
Waiting in line or something like that?
No, I slept outside because I couldn't afford a hotel.
Oh, okay.
So in the sleeping bag. And then I was with two women that had driven me down. And the next night we went to a bar. And women at the bar, one woman would be paid $25 every time she turned a Canadian in Buffalo to the Border Patrol. So they pick us up and they take us to wherever they take us to. And they try to make us sign papers that we're lesbians so we can't immigrate. And the cops have me in a room and they say, the other two signed that they're lesbians. I said, they're what? They're what? He said, they're lesbians. I said, what do you mean? He said, they're gay. I said, oh, you're kidding. And I refused to sign it because had I signed that paper, I couldn't have immigrated. They signed it. They were bullied into signing it.
So I have to say, in that moment,
yeah,
you were in the closet.
Well, in Nazi Germany, if I were being held by the Gestapo and they said, are you a Jew? I wouldn't consider it closeted if I said yes. It's called saving your life.
Yeah, it's not a lifestyle. It's a momentary choice.
Also, being gay isn't a lifestyle. This is not a lifestyle. It's our lives.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so back to New York.
Yes.
And are you like 21 at this point or something like that?
It was 1962 or 3, so I was 20 or 21, right?
Then you go to a drag ball.
I go to a drag ball and 500 men in dresses dancing with 500 men in tuxedos. First floor is the drag show. Second floor is the policeman's convention. They raid that drag show, the drag ball, and they start arresting people. And they arrest 44 drag queens. And I went over and I said, I'm from Canada, right? I'm not scared of the police. Excuse me, officer, why are you arresting these gentlemen? You don't fool me. You're one of them. Threw me into handcuffs. And the line I used is, that's how I got into bondage, because it brings it back to a laugh. Because I'm showing about arresting a 20-year-old, right? So I had to get the laugh. And then they take me to jail and they arrest 44 drag queens and me for female impersonation.
How were you dressed up? Like, what did
I was just dressed in slacks, but not masculine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't think didn't look like them, so I wouldn't know. I mean, they had the wigs and the pumps and the this and the that. I don't know. They just didn't like me and threw me in jail. I mean, because I talked to them.
Yeah, yeah. So then you're in jail with all of these drag queens for female impersonation. Yeah,
I'm busted for female impersonation. They allowed me one call that I call my mother, hello, mama. I'm in New York, arrested for female. No, and I didn't call a lawyer. I couldn't afford it. So I called the New York Post, and the next day the headlines read, 44 men and a girl in slacks arrested for female impersonation.
That is just the most genius thing anyone has ever done. I love that you called the New York Post. You become
very creative when you're scared.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, but it's amazing that you didn't freeze up, though. I would have wanted to call my mommy right away. You obviously were.
So I got arrested for female impersonation, and after they let me go,
you were like, I kind of liked female impersonation.
Well, no, I didn't, but I thought that was a way to break into show business. Mm-hmm. I'm in New York. I look like, I'm a little kid. I don't know how to do Broadway. I don't know how to do anything, but I'm gay. Mm-hmm. So I called the 82 Club, and they had read about me in the paper the day before, 44 men and one girl arrested. Oh. And I go down, and Kit Russell, who's the manager, is an impersonator, but also the manager, the stage producer, says, all right, what man do you want to do? Because at that time, Stormy Laverne was very famous for doing a man, the Jewel Box Review. So I said, no, I don't want to do a man. I want to do a woman. But it's easy. Here's me, a natural woman, and then here's me, a drag queen woman, right? Mm-hmm. I just had to accentuate. He said, who do you do? And I said, I do Judy Garland. He said, well, let me hear. I said, okay. Happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow. Why, oh, why can't? That's it.
Did you have that in your back pocket already? Like, had you been working on an impression, or you just
No.
kind of pulled it out?
Everything
just comes naturally to you.
Yeah, I just pulled it out of my ass. You're right.
What was your stage name again?
Stacy Morgan.
Yeah, and you were a big deal.
I was a very famous female impersonator.
That's so amazing.
And straight people, they love to come, oh, look at impersonating a girl. They'd point. And they had to guess the girl in the show at the end. They asked people to guess, and they'd all yell this one, that one. Nobody ever guessed me.
Never.
No. But my mother, the day she came.
Oh, she obviously knew. She thought it was everyone, right?
Yes.
That was news to her.
They're all girls.
Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ plus women? You know what they say. Life is short and the world is wide. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ plus woman, you want to be able to go on vacation, have some fun, and be yourself. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations, so you can relax and be completely yourself. Olivia also provides the entertainment, bringing comedians and musicians from within our community. Traveling by yourself? No problem. Olivia has a robust solos program so you can travel independently, together. Single, coupled, or in a group, you'll meet amazing LGBTQ plus women who come from all walks of life yet have so much in common. Join the thousands of Olivians who travel to bucket list destinations all over the world. It's life-changing to be in the majority on your own vacation. Discover Olivia for yourself at olivia.com today.
A lesbian bar opened in LA just now.
Yes.
Ruby Fruit Jungle.
Right? We've covered that.
Oh, so you were in LA?
Yeah.
You could have visited me. I have
a
house, a pool.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that because you live on some sort of lesbian commune or something?
No, compound. I live on an acre, and there's 3 houses. The big house, which I'm on, and with Carol. We're family. We're not lovers, but we're, it's a primary relationship, very close family. Mm-hmm. And then I have a lesbian living in the pool house behind the pool. And then I have a 2-bedroom house. These are all legal.
Yeah.
So it's like a lesbian compound. And then every Monday we get together. A bunch of lesbians come over and we watch Mondays with Maddow.
Oh my gosh.
And we watch Rachel Maddow.
Can you please talk about your huge accolade of being the first out lesbian on national TV?
Okay, so I was part of a comedy team called Harrison and Tyler. After we broke up, Patty said, Robin, do openly gay comic. And I said, how? What? Nobody had ever done it, so I didn't know how to do it. You know what I mean? She said, oh, just talk about coming out to your mother. And that was my first routine. And I did it, and people loved it. So I began to do openly lesbian comedy out in the open.
Because before, what was the material wasn't explicitly lesbian.
It was pro-gay. No, we said we were lesbians, but we didn't know how to make a joke because all the jokes had been done against gay people. So I had to make it funny for us.
Yeah.
Not use it as, humor is a razor sharp edge of the truth. It's anger or pain made funny. So when somebody says, oh, I hate your shirt, there's no such thing as just kidding. They mean it. Or let me play devil's advocate. That's just a chicken shit way of hiding behind what they're really thinking.
Yeah, for sure.
So humor is such a potent weapon that the Catholic Church banned mimes. When female mimes and they called them prostitutes, and they wouldn't let them be mimes. So the Catholic Church was against comedy, actually. Can make sense.
I'm not surprised by that.
What, the Pope dresses in drag and they're against comedy?
I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy.
Hypocrites. Anyway, once I started it poured out of me. But Just Kidding, which is, I think, the best work I've ever done, is online. And always a bridesmaid, never a groom. Basically, it was about coming out. By the way, when I did openly gay material at the Comedy Store, get off stage, you dyke,
Really?
Yeah.
Because around what year was that?
In the 70s.
The 70s.
So I get cast on the Phyllis Diller show, the first annual Funny Woman show starring Phyllis Diller. She was very religious, by the way.
So why did she have you? How did you?
So I said to her,
position?
They probably saw us at the Comedy Store in the belly room, the women, And so I said, going up to her and I said, Miss Diller, do you mind introducing me as a lesbian comic? And she said, oh, no, dear, I can't do that. But I will introduce you as a feminist comic because we know that all feminists are lesbians. She introduced me and she's done so much for women in the movement. She said everything but the word lesbian, but I went on and I finally said the famous line. A guy came over to me and said, "Are you a lesbian?" And I said, "Are you the alternative?"
What was the response to you being on
the audience was full of women and gay people. They had advertised the first annual Funny Woman show with Phyllis Diller. So the audience had a lot of lesbians in it too.
Okay.
So I got a standing ovation.
Yeah. And what about outside of?
I started to play colleges and there was nobody else. There was no Meg, Margie, Chris, and Holly playing colleges or anybody. I was the first out. So I got a ton of work and a huge following.
Because people wanted to hear what you had to say.
Especially gay people.
Yeah, of course.
You know, they'd never seen anybody gay. I remember I went to Russia in 1990 and there was a delegation of us, Harry Hay, and a whole bunch of activists went to Russia and took the first Russian gay conference in 1990. And they asked me if I'd do my show. And I said, "Do you speak English?" "No, Russian. We can't pay you, but we give you caviar." So I got beluga caviar. It had to be worth thousands. I'm eating it like peanut butter, right? So I walk on stage to do a show. I have 3 interpreters that are from English to Russian. And I thought, I wonder if it's going to work, because I've never done it. It was sold out, 800 men. Not because they knew Robin Tyler. They just had never seen anybody say the word gay on stage.
Right.
You could get 5 years in a Russian prison.
I mean, they still don't in Russia.
It was easier. One of the president of the United States, I forget which one, was visiting them.
Okay.
So they weren't going to arrest us. So
okay.
I opened my show with, "Oh, I remember you. I recognized your blue jeans. I saw you on the food line this morning." And they stopped and they laughed because I made fun of the fact they were having a hard time getting food. And then I did things on their clothes and on how Nelly and how this and how that. And it worked. I actually the show went great being interpreted into Russian. But a lot of it was they had just never seen anybody talk. They whispered it off stage. And I'm running around the stage saying, "I'm a big lesbian."
I mean, obviously things are funnier when you've never heard anything like it. I mean, I'm sure the shock factor was just over and over again.
South Africa too. I did the first out show. South Africa. I remember I was speaking in England at a demonstration and the police started to beat up it was a big demonstration against Maggie Thatcher was the president. And I'm speaking because I had performed at the Bloomsbury Theatre on the West End as a comic. And I'm speaking and I see the police going to go hit people. And I said, if the police out there dare hit one gay person, I am going to start mentioning the members of the royal family who are gay. Everything stopped. You'd think somebody pulled the plug on the film and everybody stopped.
And it worked.
It worked, yeah. Yeah,
That's amazing.
So then I get a call from a guy in the hotel and he says, "My name is Ian McCallan and I'd like to meet with you." So I said, "Okay." So we go to high tea at the Hilton and he says, "I'm an actor." I said, "I know who you are," but he wasn't in the movie, whatever you call it, but I knew Ian was an actor. This is before. And he says, "I want to come out. When should I come out?" And I said, "Yesterday." So he did. He came out. When I did the 3rd March, he came and spoke at the 3rd March for me.
I can't believe he called a meeting just to ask you when to come out.
Well, because he was an actor and he was so worried about his career, but he wanted to come out. He ended up forming Stonewall there, which is like, I guess, HRC here. Yeah. But it's a big organization. But, even look, the richest people or the most famous people know they have a lot to lose. So they have to be convinced that stepping out, they get to breathe and be free. So I understood it. And then he did A Night Out, which is a play he does about coming out. And so I've influenced a few people to come out.
Yeah,
Diane,
I'm sure you've influenced a lot of people. When did you start fighting for marriage equality?
Well, first of all, I was at Stonewall the second night. Pat Harrison and I lived together. I was going to go and fight. I saw everybody fight on the street. She said, "You can't go because you'll be deported." So I didn't. And I went back to the house that night and I was crying. And I said, "I will never not fight again. I don't care if I'm deported. I'm never going to stand by." So that night, Robin Tyler, the activist, was born, the gay activist. I ended up calling for the first March in Washington in 79. 100,000 people came. Second March, 1987, 600,000. And that was the march that had the big AIDS quilt and also the marriage ceremony. Two men had requested I do a marriage ceremony. They were, and the board voted against it. So I did it anyway. Because who is this board? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of a sudden there's a march board and they're going to say what they said. No one's interested in that. So it's none of your business. If they want to do it, let them do it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's always a committee.
What was your role in the ceremony?
I organized it and I got the person to do it. I grabbed a woman and married her. Okay. It wasn't like a real marriage.
Right.
And I got Troy Perry there. So, but I really produced it. That was my role.
If you've listened to our Lesbian Bar episodes, the name Troy Perry might sound particularly familiar to you. This is again about Charlene, so I'm sorry if you haven't heard it, but maybe you should go back and do that. He was the famous out gay pastor that came to preach after the Upstairs Lounge fire in New Orleans. And he was very involved in the fight for same-sex marriage with Robin. They even went on tour together.
5,000 people came, 87, to the marriage ceremony. So the two things that happened were the AIDS quilt and the marriage ceremony. And I think that the 87 march is when we went from a sexual liberation movement to a civil rights movement. I think that was a transition between the AIDS quilt and all of these men dying, whatever, and then the marriage. So we went from a sexual liberation. And a lot of the men were mad. This is about sexual liberation. I said, no, it's not. They said you could do whatever you want in the privacy of your own home, right? Even though you couldn't because they busted the first sodomy thing. They went into the home. But it was never about sex. It was about controlling us. It was about us not seeing the light of day. It wasn't about sex. So if I never had sex with a woman again, I would still be a lesbian. I wouldn't be a happy lesbian. That's my line. So, and then the 93 march happened and 1 million people came. In 1971, two men got married in Minnesota. And marriage was not illegal then, but for same-sex couples, right up until Baker and McConnell got married. Then in 1974, this man, one was from Australia, and they married in Arizona because one of their names didn't sound like a man, right? So they get married, and then they use that as a lawsuit to say, I want to stay in America. But he lost. They lost. The marriage wasn't recognized. And so that was before us. I belonged to a group called Freedom to Marry, and since 2000, we would go to the Beverly Hills Courthouse. We're from the bastion of gay radical liberation, Beverly Hills. And that's where my wife came from. Her grandfather was the first Democratic governor of California, Colbert Levy Olson.
Wow.
And her father was a judge, so Beverly Hills. Why should we are everywhere, right?
Yeah.
That's mine, by the way. We are everywhere.
I know that. We're talking about how Robin actually coined the phrase, we are everywhere, as a popular rallying cry for the movement.
But in 2004, the state of Massachusetts recognized same-sex marriage. It was Massachusetts, right?
It was the first.
And but they brought out 100-year-old law that they'd used for slaves, it's slavery, saying you had to be from the state. You couldn't come here and get married and run away. You had to be from the state. So it really wasn't equal marriage rights, but it was a marriage. And after that, people, all of a sudden, our demonstrations all over the country, we're organizing all over the country, got huge. Gloria Allred came in 2004 to the courthouse and said she would represent Diane Olson and I in a lawsuit, and Reverend Troy Perry and his husband, Philip DeBleek, who had married in Canada. So when they handed us the thing saying marriage is only between a man and a woman, Gloria's hand took it, steps outside, and announces this lawsuit. And this is the first lawsuit filed in California in the same-sex suit that eventually won marriage rights. Meanwhile, that afternoon, Gavin Newsom starts marrying people in San Francisco, even though it's not legal. It's like a marriage demonstration, like I did in 87, but he's getting a lot of press.
At the time, Gavin Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco.
So he's marrying people, and that's getting press all over the world. And then 6 weeks later, the Supreme Court of California said those marriages aren't legal. So they got annulled, right? Meanwhile, our lawsuit was in court.
Yeah.
So they went ahead and filed in the city of San Francisco with the ACLU and Lambda Legal. They filed on behalf of 6 couples. And eventually, the two were consolidated into one lawsuit. And we ended up winning. Tyler versus State of California. We won. Diane and I got married. in Los Angeles. We were the only ones allowed to marry that night in LA County, which is 10 million people.
Wow.
And also Del and Phyllis got married in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But they really didn't believe in marriage. They thought it was a heterosexual thing. So they would only let one camera in, like a camera feed. We had press we were in front of the Beverly Hills courthouse, and we had press from all over the world that came. And I mean, they carried it everywhere. So we got married, and then people voted on Prop 8.
Prop 8 was a California ballot proposition for a state constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage. It passed in November of 2008, which was 5 months after Robin had won her court case and married Diane that June.
I think it was 9,000 couples, 18,000 people, or 18,000 couples, 36,000, something like that. And then
a multiple of 9.
Right. But then they stopped it, and Prop 8 passed. Prop 8 said a marriage is between a man and a woman. They can't stop our marriages or roll them back. It's grandfathered in. We're already married before the law. So now there's a whole group of us, thousands of us that are married, and thousands that can't get married. Isn't that odd?
Yeah.
And by the way, the Mormon church was behind that. They put up a lot of the money. So I ended up marrying Patty.
I'll cut that out.
I should have.
Okay, Patty is Pat Harrison, who was Robin's comedy and romantic partner of many years, but not the woman she sued the state of California for the right to marry. That was Diane.
I love Patty all my life. She was my soul relationship.
Oh, really?
And truthfully, I should have married Patty, not Diane. But Diane and I were the famous couple. So here I am. If you look at wedding footage, I'm crying the whole time. Why am I crying? Because I'm not marrying Patty.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
That's another punchline.
No.
Wow.
Was the truth. So that's the marriage thing.
How did you get in that position? Like, how did you end up having this platform to be calling the marches on Washington?
I didn't. I just did it.
You really?
Well, no, I was a comic.
Yeah.
And I was at the University of Minnesota, and there was a referendum. They had a gay rights platform, but Anita Bryant, remember Anita Bryant?
I do, yeah.
She was the singer. What's my line on her? The only one that hated her more than gay people were music lovers. She was a singer. A gay person threw a pie in her face. I remember that. But she started. She's the first time I used the born again line. Was on an I don't mind her being born again, but why does she have to come back as herself? It's the first time I used that line, little knowing I'd be using it against these people decades later.
Yeah.
So she started, and I was at the University of Minnesota, and I said, what are you going to do if you lose? And then I was going to do a joke. Let's march on Washington. We'll set up tents. We know how gay men love camping. So I said, let's march on Washington. And they started applause, and they're yelling, march, march, march. I said, yeah. And so I went into a speech about why we should march on Washington. Mm-hmm. And that's how I called the first march. It started out as a joke. See, there's no such thing as just kidding.
Thank you to our sponsor, Olivia Travel, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ plus women. If you like this episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. It really helps others discover our podcast. Cruising is produced by a small but mighty team of 3 queer women, Rachel Karp, Jen McGinnity, and me, your host and editor, Sarah Gabrielli. Our theme song is by Joey Freeman. You can support us at buymeacoffee.com/cruisingpod or follow us on social media at cruisingpod and on the web at www.cruisingpod.com.